would like to talk about a guy. There was a moment in which I realized, I was 19, maybe 20, I was sneaking into college campuses at the time, and traveling the country, vaguely looking for magicians. And at one point, I realized that the only magicians I liked and studied were the only black magicians I'd ever seen, which I thought was bizarre. But I am mixed race, so I've never felt black, so it was weird that there's like this underlying psychological thing. And so at one point, I came across a book about a famous black magician by the name of Black Herman. And as all great magicians' autobiographies, it's filled with lies and claiming credit. He literally was died and resurrected more times than Jesus, like 4 times. It's a remarkable book. But, unless I guess you believe in that, maybe he's but anyways, wonderful book. And it made me think, like, somehow, until that moment, I never realized all the magicians I studied were black magicians. So I started doing my research to get into more black magicians, and I came across one guy who's the guy I want to tell you about, named Richard Potter. Richard Potter was the first American magician of any race, just happened to be black. And he was around when our founding fathers were around. And it was rumored that he was the bastard child of Benjamin Franklin. Unfortunately, it turns out not to be true. But during his lifetime, he toured a magic show across the entirety of the United States and Europe. So the question that naturally begged was, how does a black man, at the height of slavery in America and racism, tour a magic show through the South? Not necessarily a talent promise, but he did do it. And the answer was he wasn't black, he was mixed, just like me. And so he had lighter skin tone, like this. And he would only perform with a turban on, and he never talked about race, so everyone assumed he was East Indian. Because there's no reason a black person would ever get away with that, right? But a noted magic biographer talks about his son, uncreatively named Richard Potter Jr. And he says that his son was very different, and his son didn't perform in a turban or anything. He would start his show with a song in which he said, my name is Little Potter, but they call me Mulatto. But when it comes to cutting up the capers, I'm the dandy. Basically saying, I'm mixed, black, or whatever slur you want to call me, but I'm still the best magician you're ever going to see. So what I've done, and the reason I tell you this, is I would like to begin my performance tonight by performing a trick that both Richard Potter and his son Little Potter would have done in their shows back when our founding fathers were still. So that being said, right here, your name is?
Rudo.
Rudo? Oh, Rudo. This card is your card. But it is also your card. What's your name?
Joe.
Joe. And it is also your card. What is your name?
Molly.
Molly. Rudolph, Joe, and Molly. I just told you this card is your card, and I know that's a bold assumption because none of you have yet even selected your cards. Rudolph, I'll just run through the cards like this. Tell me to stop whenever you want.
Stop.
Right here? Is that this card or this card?
First.
First one right here. Take a look at the card, remember it. And if a few of you would also help to remember that, because if we get to the end and you don't remember, this has no point. So keep going. Joe, would you also say stop? Stop. Right here. This card?
Sure.
Perfect. Take a look at it, remember it. And again, if a few of you would help to remember that card, for the same reason, I don't think I say right. And right here, would you also say stop?
Stop.
Right. And also, if a few of you would remember that. So we've had 3 cards selected, not even taken out of the deck. There's a few reasons for this. One, we know at least a few cards separates each card, but that doesn't really matter because I've already told you this. Rudolph is your card, and your card. So for the first time, Rudolph, what was your card?
10 of diamonds.
The 10 of diamonds. Jumpers are wild, so I feel like that counts. I was expecting that to fall flat. Would you hold your hand flat for me? Think about your card. How about that? Really imagine it, though. And really imagine trying to get a picture of your card in your mind. Really think about it. When you think you have a clear picture of your card in your mind, take a look at the card. And hopefully something's Yes, indeed. It has changed. Sorry, 10 of diamonds wasn't your card, was it? Would you do the same? Hold your hand flat on the table, and really imagine your card. Think about your card. When you have a clear picture of a joke, take a look and hopefully something is. Would you please hold your hand flat on the table for me? Heineken 00. It takes a lot of those, I've heard. also think about your card, really imagine it. When you have a clear picture of it, take a look and hopefully something has happened to the card. And here we have, it is changed to the eight of hearts wasn't your card, that was your card, eight of hearts. Well, you have to take it seriously, I'm sorry, you really need to think about it. You need to have to blame
I'm just so drunk.
She pregame before she goes. Go ahead, take a look. My name is James Maple. You can call me a mulatto, but when it comes to playing tricks, I'm the dandy. So, I do promise this is a very different show. But being that you've seen a lot of magic at this point, right? At least the majority of you have seen, oh dear God, almost 2 hours worth of magic. So, I would like to tell you a little bit about magic, because no one really tells you how to appreciate magic. In any way, right? You get classes on how to appreciate movies, classes on how to appreciate music, everything else, literature, nothing about magic. So I'd like to tell you about magic. Since literally no one else will. Yeah, so that is to say, magic, every trick tells a story. What phrases? A story that's inherent to the procedure of the trick. So even if I'm not using any words, I'm still telling you a story by the very nature of what I'm doing, what's happening. And as is true of all art, that story is up to interpretation. There was my favorite example, I guess, of art being up to interpretation is the Invictus, William Renaissance, right? Beautiful poem. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole. ... right? Beautiful. Nelson Mandela cites that poem as being the thing that helped him get through his time in prison. He'd recite that poem to himself every day. But, being up to interpretation, Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bomber, the largest act of domestic terrorism to date, when he was asked for his final words on death row, he also said, out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole. Same, different interpretation. But, very often, I realize, it is our interpretation of what is happening that makes it good or not good, interesting or not interesting, more so than what's actually happening. It doesn't matter how good I am if you don't care, right? So, I learned that for myself. I was in, I think I was in the middle of America somewhere, and there was this homeless guy who did tricks on the street with trash. That's kind of how he made his money, right? So he would pick up a bottle cap, make it vanish, reappear behind some kid's ear. The mother would turn around, oh my God, a homeless man just touched my kid. A crowd of films. And then he passes the hat and does a show. Interesting way to make some cash. But one day, a napkin was floating around, and he picks up this napkin, and he does a trick with the napkin. And I thought it was so beautiful, I ran to him and I said, I'll give you $100 if I can do that trick. And he says, that's not what it is, kid. And we do have kids here, so I won't say exactly what he said. But that's how he talked, right? He said, it's not what it is, kid. He says, back in my day, the rule was this. You can steal what you're capable of stealing, but I'll never teach you a damn thing. And I thought, tricks on the street with trash, you need the $100, right? Like, let's be honest here. But so I watched him do the trick a few more times, and I stole it, as he basically asked me to. But when he came around with his tip jar, I slowly crumpled a $1 bill, threw it in the tip jar, and I left. But I switched it for a $100 bill, using a sleight of hand, with a note that I'd written on it that said, thanks for the trick. Which was cute but expensive, and I would never do it again. I thought it was worth it at the moment. And so about a week later, Oklahoma City, I'm doing a bar show, so I have a little tip jar, I'm doing bar tricks and everything. And he shows up, and he grabs a napkin from the bartender, puts it on the table, sits back the way all magicians do when they watch another magician. Right? If they see something they like. That's about all you get out of him. So he sits there as if to say, your turn, right? Do the trick for me now. So I did the trick. His trick with a napkin for him, and he slowly crumpled a $1 bill. He threw it in my tip jar and he left. But of course, instead of a $1 bill, I found my $100 bill and my note was crossed off, and underneath it just says, "You do okay, kid." So, one of my favorite stories from that bizarre few years traveling around. But I mention it because there is a napkin. I'd like to now show you the trick with a napkin. It's kind of a lie. I only need half an hour. Was there anyone here who hasn't been used for a trick tonight? I like to keep from this pool of people. I see some fingers being pointed. All right. Right here, sir. Would you do me a favor? It's a strange request. Are you right or left hand? Your left hand? Would you hold this for me? We'll get back to it later. This is a trick, but half of an act. You like the music choices? Maybe tears you have to.
Yeah, I was actually impressed already.
And that indeed is the trick with an act.
No.
Yes, that is a trick. But at this point, we were talking about narrative. So what is the trick about, right? You could be telling yourself any number of stories. It's about the phoenix rising from the ashes, being broken down and being built back better. Well, maybe not better, but you get the point. Except, it could be any number of cliches, except that this is not the story of a napkin that was ripped and put back together. It's the story of a napkin that was ripped and then switched, like the $1 bill in the story. And it was switched for the one I handed you at the beginning. So if this is together, you should be holding just torn pieces.
Oh my God.
You do okay, kid. And so, it is out of the night that covers me, but black is the pit from pole to pole. I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. But in the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud, and under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody, but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms with the horror of the shade. And yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me, unafraid. It matters not how strait the gate, nor how charged with punishments the scroll, because I am the master of my fate, and I am the captain of my soul. So let's switch gears, shall we? Yes, this trick starts the way all good magic tricks should start. Would you pick a nail? Any nail. Yes, make sure it is a real nail. Feel free to pass it around so people can inspect it. Make sure it is real. And on this side, I'll hand you a hammer.
No.
Make sure that is also real. You can also pass it around if you wish. In the meantime, you've come to probably expect that every trick's going to have some kind of point. So in this one, there's a literal point. But I was thinking about nails. Don't ask me why. And I realized it only has one point, other than the obvious. And the point of the nail is to pierce deep, but without perspective. It pierces the floorboard and the paneling, and indeed is what holds up the house. Pierces the lid of the coffin, and they say that's what keeps it shut. And it also is pierced the flesh of Jesus Christ and nailed him in the sky. It has one purpose, that is to pierce deep, but more importantly, without perspective. It is a real nail, yes? Yes. I trust your hands are clean, but you'll see. And it is a real hammer?
No.
No.
Stop it. No.
No.
Oh, my. Speaking of, we do have kids here. This is the one not to try.
Why?
It is important at this point to point out, it's not going behind the side or anything. It's not going up, it's going straight in.
Oh my God.
That's so funny.
What is your name?
Alexis.
Alexis. I have a strange favor to ask.
No, I'm not pulling it out.
How did you know where I was going with that?
Come here.
Go, Alexis,
Go.
Come on, Alexis.
One specific request.
Okay.
Just hold the end of it. Don't pull it, just hold it. Let me know when you have it.
I have it.
I'm gonna move my head backwards, don't pull.
Lord, baby Jesus.
Ready? Don't drop.
I'm not. Oh my God, it's moving.
Oh. Oh.
Oh my God. Yeah, put it back in your mouth.
But the point of the strip, of course,
No.
No.
was that the nail has only one purpose. That is to pierce deep. Go without perspective. And Alexis, this is a gift of modern art. I got one last thing for you before I'm officially done. How do you sustain yourself in this odd art form? Good question, glad you asked. For me, for a while, I was writing scripts and creating tricks for other magicians, is what I was doing. And at one point, I was hanging out at like a magician's convention type of thing. It was just a bunch of guys in a casino hanging out and talking. And a guy comes up to me and he says, "Hey, I heard you're the writer in magic, and I need someone to write something for my show that's meaningful." And I said, "Sure, just one question. What do you mean by meaningful? What is meaningful?" Which seemed like a good question at the time. But as he started to make up an answer, I realized he didn't know what he was talking about. Unfortunately, as the guy he's coming to, I didn't know what he meant either, right? What's meaningful? I don't know. So then I got all distraught, right? And I go to the internet and I start looking up the meaning of meaning. What is the meaning of meaning, right? So, very bad, I know, but I spent like 3 hours looking up dictionary definitions. But all they seem to suggest in the dictionary is that if something has a meaning, it is therefore meaningful, right? A word is a definition, it's meaningful. If something is symbolic, it therefore has a meaning. That's as good as saying nothing, right? Because it's not really what we're talking about. So, then I called my friend Armando, another great magician in Vegas, and I said, if I could be there in 4.5 hours, would you have coffee with me? He said, sure. So I get there, and he says, what are you working on? And I said, I just spent like 3 hours on Google trying to figure out, the meaning. And he says, oh, you're just an idiot. I was wasting our time with this. And so then I called another friend of mine who's like an armchair philosopher, but he has this weird, interesting game where he likes to misquote philosophers to pass his own ideas off, because he doesn't think you'd think about it if it didn't come from like a trusted source. So if it was just his idea, it's not good enough. So he likes to misquote Thoreau as having said that one day he was walking through deep woods where probably no one had ever walked before, and he happens upon a flower. And he says it's the most beautiful flower he's ever seen in his life, and he stops to wonder what could be the meaning of a flower so beautiful and no one's ever going to see it. Then he realizes it's not that no one's going to see the flower, he's seeing the flower. So perhaps the meaning of the flower is for that one moment of beauty along his walk. Which is something, it's pretty kind of poetic. But it's not everything, right? It leaves too much on the table. Then I came across the Buddha, and the Buddha in his famous flower sermon. He's walking with his disciples, or whatever you call them, Buddhists, and students. And he's walking, and he plucks a flower, he holds it above his head, and he says, nothing. That's the whole speech, isn't that well written? He doesn't say anything, but as the story goes, one of his students looks back at him with a smile and a nod, as if to say, I finally get it now. And what is there to get? He didn't say anything. If I could be so bold as to suggest what I think the Buddha was asking, without using the words, he's asking, what does it mean? I think a lot of times in life, we are trying to inject meaning where it doesn't necessarily belong, or more importantly, without having even defined what we're talking about. Right, Kirch's time, a rose is a rose is a rose is a rose is a rose. Can't that be? Can't things just be what they are without us forcing our hand, unknowingly? I don't know. And a number of these tricks, I've been told, are symbolic. But I ask you, does that actually make them meaningful, like the dictionary definition would suggest? Again, I don't know. But even if so, what is the meaning of meaning anyways? That is, of course, to say, if there even is Thank you guys for coming out.